Perfect.
Hello, Facebook Live world, and welcome to Michelle Hoffman's Liner Notes. Today I get to talk and share with you Robert Heath. Michelle Hoffman's Liner Notes. Liner Notes are the insight the artists or curators offer into what's really going on at the time of creation of this artwork, whether it's a musical recording, a piece, a masterpiece, a sculpture, a painting, a book. So the liner notes are the insight into what's really going on and what has inspired this record of art to be what it is. So Michelle Hoffman's liner notes is imperative insight and curated wisdom that you need to inspire you to unblock your potential. In a changing world, you can find your unique path to create balance and enjoy an abundant life with all the resources you need. I, Michelle Hoffmann, help new and seasoned managers develop high-performing teams to achieve personal and professional revenue goals. So you can discover how I can help you and your company succeed at lightthesparklady@gmail.com. It's lightthesparklady@gmail.com. Today, I'm super excited to share with you somebody who I look forward to collaborating with in many, many situations with CEOs, with business owners, with leaders of any kind, because Robert Heath wrote a book. He's a CEO at Legacy Leadership Consulting, and his book is called Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to Getting the Best Out of Your Team. And Robert is all about leadership that facilitates the manifestation of greatness in others. And if you can stay till the end of this webinar, and it'll be about 25, 30 minutes, then he's got a free copy of his book to share with you at www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. How did you find
Thank you for
yourself
having me.
in this magnificent place?
Well, it's interesting that you asked, because I didn't actually think of myself as kind of being a leadership consultant or a leadership teacher. Um, One of the things that happened is throughout my career, I've been a teacher, and then I went to law school and went to the United States Marine Corps and became a Marine Corps officer. One of the things that I realized was that there were a lot of people who didn't really understand how to lead and how to lead in such a way that it brought out the best in the people that they worked with. And I knew that I had been blessed with having good bosses and good teachers and good leaders, starting with my father when I was younger, who was a drill sergeant in the Army. But he wasn't the just, all stick, no carrot type of drill sergeant. He was able to teach me and help me to understand and learn how to think more than just what to do. And that continued on through college, through graduate school. When I was a teacher, I had some very good principals that I worked for in the initial years when I started teaching. And so I got to see what good leadership was. And I also got to see how there wasn't a lot of good leadership to go around. I got to see how there were people that really struggled finding themselves and being able to be their best because their leadership didn't foster the same environments that I was blessed to be in. And so I went on a journey to learn how to lead like that. And that's what took me to law school, learning how to understand the systems that we have in our society. And in the Marine Corps, learning from the best leadership academy in the world, how to lead and how to be a leader of people to get the best out of people, to do more with less. I always tell people the Marine Corps has a budget that is smaller than Navy SEAL Team 6's budget. And that's for the entire Marine Corps. So we're really good at doing more with less. And I was able to be a company commander in the Marine Corps during my time there, and I learned a tremendous amount. And then I came out into the civilian world and decided that my contribution, the way that I would be able to help normal citizens to have that type of leadership, is to go and help to develop those types of leaders.
That's amazing. What an incredible, I love that you have titled your book and your consulting business Legacy Leadership, because as you've just shared with us, you have been able to identify, acknowledge, respect, admire, and honor the fact that you've had good leadership
Mm-hmm.
throughout your life, and that you
Mm-hmm.
can acknowledge that. And it was actually, you've experienced a legacy of leadership. And it sounds like this is almost a gift forward for those
Exactly.
people who may be a little uncertain about their leadership, maybe only in reflection that what's happening in your business or what might be happening in your workplace, at home, wherever, in relationships, that it's, you're
Mm-hmm.
not really getting from your people what you think you can get.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly. The people that I work with are really, you said the perfect word, exasperated. They're feeling, right? And that's why the title of the book is what it is. They have that feeling, that sense of, why can't the people that work for me just do what I'm asking them to do? Like, I've told them how to do it. I've explained it to them. Why can't they just do it? And that exasperation, that frustration, and then the anxiety of seeing down the road and knowing that we're not going to hit the goals that we need to hit, knowing that we're not going to get to where we need to go, is building. And what they've been trying to do hasn't been working. They've been running into this wall over and over and over again. And what they realize is something's got to give. They know that they can't work any harder. They're working as hard as they can. The average CEO and executive small business owner in the country works over 72 hours a week. And that's just, one of the things they do. They take work home. They watch, they read emails. They check things. And even when they're not at work, right, they still have to deal with it, and it's going through their head. Exactly. And I remember this vividly because I actually went through it. I remember my wife telling me, when you're here, you're not really here.
Mm.
And I remember what that felt like. And this was when I was a company commander in the Marine Corps. It was at the point where I was trying to prove that I was worthy of the post that I had been bestowed, right? And I had been successful at every point in time up to that time. And I had learned how to delegate. When I was a teacher, I could run my classroom and everything was good, but the stakes were lower. When I was a company commander, I had 220 Marines and sailors when we started, and I was the 24/7 person in charge and accountable for those Marines and sailors' safety, their well-being, and then their mission completion. That was
Right.
a completely different pressure. But I learned during that time how to manage my time, how to master my time, and then ultimately how to master delegation with my staff. I had a staff of 5, and we, during that period of time, actually doubled. We were given twice as many Marines almost. We went from 220 to about 360 Marines and sailors, still same staff of 5. But I went from the point where I was working 10 and 12-hour days to where I would have all my work done in 4 hours. I was done before lunch every day. And so I was able to do so much more.
That's what's so impressive, because when you have a legacy of leadership who shows you how to lead with confidence, with competence, knowing
Hmm.
that being yourself and not trying to be someone that you're not, so, or someone that you've seen before, but that in your own true skin, being your authentic self. And if that people will, I'd say there's three kinds of people: those who lead, those who follow, and those who just need to get out of the way.
Exactly.
And what you've developed here is a way to not only embody it and lead, but also to delegate and coach and train other people how to have that kind of leadership where they're not so burnt out, and they're not
Exactly.
overwhelmed, and they're not uncertain of their actions. Because we all have to make decisions. Whatever those decisions are, we need to make them with confidence, and we need to follow through in them, and we need to explain why we made the decision that we made, because all that entire company is going to be following that lead. And so
Exactly.
you
And
want
it's
to
so important. No, you're exactly correct. It's so important. And one of the big things that most leaders struggle with is they have what I call, there's 3 components of kind of legacy leadership. One is the leader's heart, one is the leader's mindset, and the third is the leader's toolkit. And there's a lot of things that are out there to tell you what the tools are to be a good leader, what systems you need to put in place, what things you need to do. There's a lot of things that are out there. Most of the people that come into leadership have a leader's heart. They are team players. They want everybody to do well. And it's actually that frustration and that anxiety and that burnout comes from them pushing so hard to try to get everybody to be at their best. But the thing that they're missing is the leader's mindset. And that's what we really focus on. That's what I focus on in the book. How do you develop the right mindset? Not to be a manager of others, but to
right.
be a leader of others.
So when you're promoted from being an individual contributor into a leadership
Mm-hmm.
position, you may know how to lead yourself, but how do you make that transition to help people lead others?
Right. That's a great question. And the big thing that a lot of people struggle with is there's a switch that you have to go through. This is a completely different paradigm shift. It's not about you anymore,
Right.
right? Jack Welch has a great quote that I love that says, when you're an employee, when you're a worker, it's about the work. It's about the task. It's about getting results. When you're a leader, your whole responsibility are the people that you lead. That's it. Your job is to make sure that they are able to get the results, that they are able to do the task, that you are creating systems and setting up an environment where they can become their best selves. And that's why we say, at legacy leadership, leadership is facilitating the manifestation of greatness in others. It's not about you anymore. And
Right.
the more we learn to delegate, the more we learn to create an environment where people can make mistakes, where people can mess up and realize that there's nothing really that they can do that's so catastrophic that it's going to tear the business down. Because if there is something that's that big, you generally don't delegate that away. That generally stays close to the vest with the people that are that are in charge of the business. And if it's not, then we can talk about your systems and how you need to pull some of those things back, right? But we talk about that in the book. Catastrophic failures, those things that that people struggle with and that we're afraid of, and so we micromanage instead of realizing that that's not something that whether they should micromanage or completely abdicate authority. And that's why we talk about leadership isn't about, as we move forward, I think the biggest thing is being able to create a space where people can feel safe showing up as their authentic selves, and where you can set reasonable expectations but still strong expectations for people where they have to show up. Because what I've learned from coaching, what I've learned from being a martial arts instructor, what I've learned from being a Marine officer is that people want to do their best. People want to do more than they're capable of. Everybody has, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about it. Self-actualization is a human craving. We just have to learn as leaders how to develop that and cultivate that, and to even inspire that type of action out of those that we lead.
That's beautiful. I have one primary rule as a business leader, and you totally nailed it. It's show up. Show up
Exactly.
physically, mentally, emotionally, and prepared to do the work. So you were talking about having a leader's heart and transitioning from being an individual contributor and knowing that your focus is on the work to having a leader's mind and doing more than just leading yourself, but leading others. And a lot of that, I talk with my clients about clearing away the challenges that might be preventing them from being their best at any opportunity that they're facing. And you talk about that, I would say, creating a safe space where they can have a catastrophic failure and actually give that as an opportunity where we can all learn from that. And it's not always how you feel, it's how you recover.
Exactly.
And that nobody
Exactly.
is lost for it, and everyone can maintain their dignity, and we become tighter as we work through these challenges together. And those are the kinds of things that roll into the leader's toolkit. So would you like to speak to the leadership toolkit that you share with your
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that we talk about. And like I said, there's a number of different tools that you can use. And there's things from, right, I've done Lean Six Sigma, I'm Scrum Master certified, I've gone through and I've led and done the Marine Corps planning process. And there's different ways to lead. There's different tools that you can use. And it's kind of like an artist, right? There's different types of brushes, there's different types of pencils, there's different types of hammers and pistons, right? That you can use to sculpt or to draw or to do all the rest of that. But none of that matters if the person that's using it isn't a master with those tools. They have to have the mindset that allows them to see how to do that. And the key difference between kind of what I call the executive leader, if you would, the person who's focused on the job and mission accomplishment, and the empowering leader who's focused on the team and getting the team to be able to accomplish the mission in the best way that the team can, is the mindset, the understanding that authority and respect are two totally different things. The understanding that delegation and micromanagement are two totally different things. And so as we go through, and when people deal with, how do I become this type of leader? How do I go there? How do I do this? The biggest key is most of us already have ingrained in us that ability to do that. When you look at parents and how parents parent children, right? When we teach a child to walk, we don't go through and micromanage everything the child does in walking, right? It would be a pointless job, and you would get horrible results, because the resiliency is the teaching tool. The fact that the child learns how to bounce back down, and here's what happens. What we do is we make sure that we clear out any dangerous sharp objects. We cover up all the plugs. We make sure that there's no sharp corners, so that again, there's no room for catastrophic failure. The child isn't going to die by us allowing them to play and learn how to walk. And once we've created that safe space, we've done two things. Number one, we've taken care of our fear that something's going to happen to them on our watch. And we're able to then engage with them completely differently, because when they fall down, it's not catastrophic in our mind. It's not foreboding. It's not, oh my God, we're not going to make it. It's, hey, you're not supposed to be on the ground. Come on, you can do it. And if they take one step, we positively reinforce everything they do, everything they do on that pathway. We're amazing leaders when children are 0 to 5. And then all of that programming goes out of our heads, and we say, we got to start preparing you for the real world.
But 0 to 5, we're doing the carrot, the reward. And like you were saying, you can't over micromanage, but we're right there to catch them before they're.
Exactly.
And
And interestingly enough, people learn the most that they've ever learned in their lives from 0 to 5.
But if I went to my teenagers right now and I'm like, come on, let's walk, they'd be like, oh, Mom, too far off the deep end.
Exactly. But one of the reasons why is because they've also gotten used to you telling them, and when I was getting my master's degree in teaching, this is one of the things that we talked about. Children hear no more times after they're 5 to the time they're grown, to the rate of 5 to 10 times as much as they hear yes.
Totally true. And employees hear that in their reviews. And the
exactly.
more got, the more no they've got. So
exactly,
I love that you point that out, because it is really important to reinforce the positive.
Exactly.
You know, do that coaxing to say you're doing it right, which then also changes the morale and enthusiasm and the culture that you're fostering in a group.
Yes, and the key thing is, we know this from cognitive behavioral science. Positive reinforcement is the most powerful tool that we have to get people to take behaviors that you want them to take. Now, a lot of people are like, but we have to hold the line. We have to punish. Punishment is a great tool for getting people to stop a behavior.
Right.
It doesn't tell them what to do. And that's the problem. So many people think that by telling you what not to do, I'm showing you the pathway of where to go. They're not understanding there's a myriad options. You told me not to do 3. There's still 997 other ones that I still don't know which one to do.
Beautiful point, because if they don't know the right path to take, all they've got is the shutdown. And then you get employees who are paralyzed, and they're worried because they want to do well, as you pointed out before. They're uncertain. They don't want to lose their relationship with the organization. That could put their personal relationships at risk. Right now in the world that we're in, they could put their health at risk, their financial revenue at risk. So everyone wants to know the right thing to do, because if we know the right thing to do and how we're expected to have it done, then it's easy. The rest
exactly. And so many cultures are set up, so many work cultures, so many home cultures, so many places in America in general are set up, and around the world are set up, where what everyone focuses on is what not to do. And then a lot of leaders wonder why people do what they need to do to not get fired, instead of doing what they need to do their best. And what I always talk to leaders about is this: you have to understand the economics. This is what I studied in undergrad, so I always revert back to economics. You have to understand the economics of workplace engagements and workplace contracts. When you pay someone, you are inherently paying them a salary that is paying them enough to not leave, to not get fired, to do their job at a competent level. What we want from them is excellence, but what we're paying them is competency. So how do we make up for that gap? And that's the gap that I call the leadership gap. What you see is leaders can take people that are getting paid the same salary, and Gallup just did the study. Teams that are engaged perform 50%, 57% more, with more effort, and they return 148% more earnings than teams that are disengaged.
Right.
What's the difference? It's the leaders. And how do you then harness that? How do you make that happen? A lot of times I hear people say, well, I'm giving them praise for what they're supposed to do. What you have to understand is this: whether they're supposed to do it or not, they could have chosen to not do it, or here's something else they could have chosen to do nothing. And
Right.
here's the interesting thing: we don't get in trouble for omitting things. We don't get in trouble for omitting initiative. We don't get in trouble for staying inside our box,
Mhm.
right? Here's my position description, and I will do this. This will not get me fired. I cannot get fired for doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. But
Right.
now that puts all of the onus on the leadership to make sure that they have designed the job perfectly for what they need in the future, and which means that they had to have a crystal ball whenever they wrote the position description and did the hiring for where they were going to be 3 years in the future, 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. That
That's
puts too much pressure on leadership. But that's the system that we create, a system where people stay in their box, where they don't take initiative, where they don't step out, because they know that if they make a mistake, they're going to get their hand slapped. And so instead, we have to figure out how to incentivize them to get out of there. And that takes a paradigm shift in understanding that authentic praise is earned. It's already earned. If they did the right thing, they earn you acknowledging that. They've already done the work for it, and you're not giving them kudos or extras or anything. You're giving them exactly what you need to say, good job, do this again.
right.
And that pays dividends over time, because now you don't have to reinforce the same things once they become habits. Once your culture changes, once everybody knows that this is what we want you to do, then you start to see the exponential growth of compounding interest.
The compounding interest of enthusiasm and an engaged workforce. I like the
Exactly.
description of the leadership gap, because if we've got people who have made a contractual agreement with an organization to do X, Y, and Z, and they will be
Mm-hmm.
reimbursed for, at a certain level. And it's really the magic that you and I offer to organizations. You're
Mm-hmm.
working with the business owners and the C-suites, and I am saying, business owners and C-suites, stay in your zone of genius. I'm going to be the one to fill that gap, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can focus on your strengths. And it's
Exactly.
really a matter of, as you were talking about employee engagement, really the salary dollars right now, companies are only getting, like, I think it's changed actually to decrease as we've got more people working remotely. So we're really only
Mm-hmm.
getting like $35,000 for every 10,000, or companies are paying $3,500 for every $10,000 that they're spending in salary, that they're not
Mm-hmm.
getting any engagement for, because employees, and particularly right now in the world space that we're in, we're getting more of our workplace to work remotely. And
Yes.
then you don't have all that magic that happens of non-job related communications and organic conversations that happen either with peers or with management, where you just need the head nod to go, do I
Yep.
have this right? You got
Yep.
it. Keep going. And so
Yep.
how do you maintain that momentum
Mm-hmm.
when you've got a business owner or a C-suite person who needs to focus on what they're doing, but they're not getting the idea that the momentum to maintain the quarterly goals and the key
Mm-hmm.
performance indicators are going to hit the revenue goals? How do you
Mm-hmm.
help them with that?
Well, a lot of it is helping them to understand that these are things that you want to deal with beforehand, right? Stephen Covey talks about in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People our importance versus urgency matrix. And so many people, C-suite execs on down, live their lives in the important and urgent box, which is
Mhm.
quadrant 1, and then in quadrant 3, which is our urgent but not really important box. And there's so many problems with that. Deloitte did a study, and they put out an article back in 2016, and they talked about how the best leaders spend about 60% of their time at work developing, coaching, supporting, and helping to train and improve their human capital. Now, what's interesting about that is if you break those numbers out, because it sounds great as a statistic, but if you break those numbers out, right, the average CEO, CFO, chief technology officer, chief information officer is spending 70 plus hours a week at work in some shape, form, or fashion. If they're spending 60% of that time, that's 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means that they would be spending 6 hours of each of those days training, developing, coaching. And if you look at their schedules, that's not what they look like. Every business that I've gone into, from the billion-dollar corporations down to the small business owner who's got 10 employees, none of them are spending 60% of their time training and developing their people. They're doing the work most of the time. So the big question is, how do you ensure that you are mastering your time and getting yourself to the point where you're getting the things off of your plate that shouldn't be there, and you're spending that time instead coaching the people that you've given it to, helping them to grow, helping them to learn, and you get it out of your mind that I shouldn't have to show them how to do this. I shouldn't have to help them with this. Because here's the key. Again, we talked about exponential growth and compounding interest. If you spend a month or 2 months working with somebody and now you don't have to do that job anymore,
Right.
how much time have you just gained over the course of the rest of that year? And that's what so many people don't think about. I mean, I did it with my own team. I used to spend, because we do a lot of Facebook marketing and Facebook ads, and I have a Facebook group and all these other things. I used to spend upwards of 10 hours a week in my Facebook group and sending posts and doing all the rest of this. I realized really quickly that's not my zone of genius. I developed and I brought on a social media team. I brought them, and it took me a couple of months of training them, of getting them trainings, sending them to different trainings and working with them and being involved in meetings and everything. But after 2 months, they were able to run an entire event on their own with just input from me. And now they're taking that over and they're going to run it. And we're getting out 4 times as much content, doing 4 times as much work as I was doing by myself 10 hours a week. And I spend no more than an hour or 2 hours a week in my social media now, posting and engaging with people. So I've cut my time by 4/5, even though I'm getting out 400% more content.
So that's a beautiful, really clear example of what you do when you're helping business owners and CXOs to really maximize the value of their time so that they can get exponential growth and compounding interest. But what happens? What kind of obstacles get in the way? Or what happens if these leaders actually don't do these things?
Right. No, it's a great point. One of the biggest things that I see that the leaders that I work with struggle with is they're so used to just implementing the next thing. They're used to trying and trying and trying that they don't develop the habits and they don't develop the culture that they need to develop. And so one of the reasons that I do the work that I do actually is because there's, like I said, there's a number of tools that are out there, and there are consulting tools that are out all over the place. And one of the things that I saw early on in my consulting career is I would go into businesses, and while I was there, everything would work well. I would teach and I would work with their leaders, and they would see the light and things would be going well, right? One of my clients, they had a $7.5 million backlog, and in a quarter, we had cleared up that backlog. They had gotten over, they were at due+1, and they had 40 to 44 hour weeks for the first time in 2 years, when they had been running at about 57 hours a week.
And that changed everything in the corporate.
Exactly. It changed culture. It changed everything. People were wanting to stay. They were having leader retention because they had turnover that was about 20% a quarter. And I mean, just all these different types of things that they were working with. But when we left, it reverted back. And it was one of those things where I started to get so frustrated with it. And I realized that I can go in and I can show you what good leadership looks like, but that's not going to fix anything. And this is where we go. This is where the legacy leadership came from in my company.
That's the
right?
legacy.
Exactly. There's an old adage that everybody knows. If you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach a person to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. But then there's still the problem of, if you have a goal of feeding the world, you got a lot of people to teach how to fish, right? And after you're gone, they can't teach anybody else how to fish. They just know how to fish. So they get to eat, but their children are going to starve, right? And that's where legacy comes in. The whole concept is, if you can teach a person to fish, you can feed the whole world forever.
And that goes back to your the metaphor you were using of moving from, I call it an individual contributor, where you're worrying about your own work, to even being a leader where you're still worrying about your own work, to being someone who leads others with a leader's heart and a leader's
Mm-hmm.
mind. And then also having the toolkit to share the skills that you have with others so that they can be better, stronger, faster than you, so that the upcoming generations can actually move through variables like the extreme variables that we're seeing in the world today. We want
Exactly.
our employees and our future people in every aspect of our lives to be nimble enough to adapt to the change that's happening in the world, and the wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and power to take advantage of the opportunities that change creates. Stephen Covey, I think, said that. And
Exactly. The synergy. Yep.
right, so that's where we're going with this. I know, similar to what you were saying, I was working with a company, and I was saying it's really hard to do business with you. And the owner was like, now we're good. And it took her a year to reach out back to me and say, I need you. Can you figure out why I've got this turnover? And
Mm-hmm.
she was losing
Mm-hmm.
employees right and left and couldn't figure it out. She's a brilliant woman. And so I went in and I did figure it out for her. And part of it
Yeah.
was streamlining the processes, part of it was the culture. And like it was one click, just one tiny thing
Yeah.
needed to be changed that actually created and adjusted the entire environment. And the following year, she increased her revenue by 2.5%. And we calculated how much she lost. She lost millions by waiting a year to reach out to me. What was
Exactly.
the trigger for a business owner or CXO to reach out to you at www.legacyleadershipmastery.com and go, Robert, I wonder if we can chat on the phone for even a few minutes to figure out if you are the right kind of person to help me determine whether you can help me meet my revenue goals and maintain momentum in my workplace, and hit my quota every single quarter. What's the
Right. No, that's
let someone
that's a
know to
great
call?
question. So the basic people that are ready to kind of work with me, or even if they have that question, here's the feeling that they have. They've been trying. They know that they're on the cusp. They know that we can double revenues. We can expand and take over a new region. We can earn market share if we could just get the right people. If we could just get the right productivity, and
Right.
then are able to scale and get our profitability. A lot of the business owners that I've worked with, especially the smaller business owners, are great at sales. They can go and build revenue with no problem. But the problem they struggle with is they can't trust their team to handle the influx that they can go and bring in. Right. And in the C-suite, it's the same thing. They feel like they've hired the right people, but their turnover is high. They feel like they've got, people that are competent and qualified, but they just can't seem to hit that stride. And what I say is, on our website, what you can do is you can go and there's a link that says click for a strategy session. And I have a 17-minute CEO call. I respect your time. I understand that you're busy. I understand that you need to be able to figure this out quickly. And basically, you can get on the phone with me. We can determine in about 17 minutes what your problem is, whether I can help you, or whether I need to refer you to some of my trusted associates who are in specifically in the field where you might have an issue. That's where we start. And then from there, we move forward to determine what level of leadership development they need, whether we're talking about really understanding how to get that time that they need, or whether we're talking about how to learn how to master delegation. And then finally, like you were saying, our legacy leadership section, where we talk about the systems that they need to put into place, where we talk about how they can learn how to really leave their office and it still run the way that it ran when they were there. And that's a separate skill set. That's what we call the mastery level, right? We talked about empowering leadership, and we talked about leading yourself. That mastery level, that legacy leadership level, is there for creating systems. So that's what we have.
Way to mastery to have work-life balance.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, is at each stage along the way, you have to learn different skills to rebalance. But at the beginning stage, if you learn it well, we've got 5 steps to mastering your time, right? If you can get those steps mastered, you will have work-life balance throughout. However, you have a different center of focus at each level. Most of the time, people don't really master the steps of mastering their time. What we talk about in our Thriving in Chaos program is most people spend their lives managing other people's priorities instead of mastering their time and living a life that's in fulfillment of and in alignment with their purpose for being on the planet.
That's beautiful. And you know what? If you were able to get work-life balance, find confidence and competence in your leadership style, knowing that people respect and, see authority in you, and that you're meeting your personal and professional goals every single year, I'd say that's worth 17 minutes.
Definitely. Definitely.
So awesome. Awesome, Robert. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. If
Thank
any
you.
if any of our listeners would like to have 17 minutes with Robert, go to www.legacyleadershipmastery.com, LEGACYLEADERSHIP And if you go to legacyleadershipmastery.com, you can get a copy of Robert's book as a gift for listening to this webinar. Why can't people just do their jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to Getting the Best Out of Your Team. Because Robert knows how to help develop leadership that is facilitating the manifestation of greatness in others. And if you just private message me here or go to lightthesparklady@gmail.com, LIGHTTHESPARKLADY@gmail.com, you're welcome to get a copy of the new management blueprint to spark talent and ignite winning teams to create valuable results. So, Robert, thank you again for being part of my liner notes. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time, and I too look forward to seeing what we can do in the future. I really like the way that our skill sets and really match and mesh together, and I think that we can do some really good things.
I'm looking forward to that. So any of you listeners, if you want to share this with any business owners or CXOs, the C-suite people, you are welcome to do it. And with that, signing off, light the spark.
Everybody have a great one, and remember to live every day like it was on purpose.